All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I just hit record. We're going to record and make this available on our website for any folks who might be interested in seeing it afterward. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Rick Berkey. I'm the Director of Global Campus and Continuing Education here at Michigan Tech. Today's session is scheduled for about an hour, and we'll be talking about our online certificate and master's program in applied statistics. We're going to have plenty of time for questions after we go through the presentation. But if you do have a question along the way, you can certainly use the Zoom chat feature. So that's how we'll monitor questions that may come up along the way. That's typically located at the bottom of your Zoom console. And I think everybody's already doing this, but maybe just stay muted during the presentation. And actually, to get started with the chat feature, we want to do a little bit of an icebreaker just to learn a little bit about the audience and get you interacting. So I'm going to turn that over to Amanda Irwin, our graduate admissions manager, to post in the chat here and get us started with a prompt. So Amanda.
Thanks, Rick. And thanks again for joining us. I'm the graduate admissions manager for our global campus. So I help students through the inquiry and application process. And if this is something you decide you want to move forward with, or maybe you already are in the application process, you'll be working with me and I can help you navigate it. What I'm going to do is just post a question in the chat here. What we're wondering is, where are you joining us from today? And has it tried to snow there yet? It's come pretty close where I'm joining from. So I'm going to go ahead and post that in the chat if you guys want to put your answers in there. And then as we go along, we'll stop periodically to answer those questions that you might have. So put them in the chat and we'll get started. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Amanda. And while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and cover our agenda. So this is what we're going to cover today. We'll do some introductions of the team here, an overview of Michigan Tech for those who may not be familiar. We'll introduce what exactly is applied statistics and why might you study it here at Michigan Tech, or why do we feel you should consider it. We'll go through a more detailed program overview of the applied statistics graduate program. Then we'll talk a little bit about career outcomes, what comes after the program, after you complete it. And then we'll close with our graduate application process and next steps and open it up to questions. And like I said, if you have questions you are thinking of along the way, certainly post those in the chat and we'll be able to get to those. So with that, I'll introduce our team here. So again, Rick Berkey, Director of Global Campus and Continuing Education. With joining me from the Department of Mathematical Sciences, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Rodika Kurtu. She's the department chair. We have Dr. Kui Zhang, professor in mathematical sciences and also teaches in the statistics area. Dr. Ying Xia, distinguished professor in mathematical sciences. And then from Global Campus, we also have Amanda Irwin, who you just met with the icebreaker. Not shown here, but also attending is Shelly Gallia. She's our marketing and communications manager in Global Campus. And Shelly's going to help us with the chat and maybe even some resources or links that might be appropriate that we can share as we're going along here in that chat. So that's our team today. We're excited to share some information with you and help you get more informed about the programs here. I'm going to go ahead and continue here and start with this overview of Michigan Tech. So we are a public research university with most recently earned a R1 designation, which stands for Very High Research Activity. We've been around since 1885. This university was really founded around metallurgy and mining and technology, which was to support the local copper mining back in 140 years ago. So we were originally the Michigan Mining School. But if you fast forward 140 years to today, we are now an HSTEM university, which covers health, science, technology, engineering, and math. So we have a breadth of educational programs as well as research and outreach in this full breadth of area. So certainly have expanded beyond that mining focus many, many years ago. And as I mentioned, the R1 designation, that really places Michigan Tech as one of, I believe it's 187 universities nationally out of more than 4,000 that have earned this top tier designation. And it's based on our research activity in terms of the research grants and contracts, as well as the number of doctoral or PhD degrees that we award each year. As far as enrollment and size of the university, we are just over 7,400 students. So by university standards, that's, I think, a modest but a good-sized university. That includes both graduate and undergraduate programs. About 80% of our enrollment is undergrad, and the other 20%, which is also growing, is the graduate programs. We have 5 colleges with over 140 degree programs. So that includes business, computing, engineering, forest resources and environmental science, and sciences and arts, which is where the applied statistics and the mathematical sciences department is housed. And I'd say more recently, Global Campus was launched just about 4 years ago, fall of 2021. And it continues to grow as a home for more than 40 online degree and certificate programs, graduate certificates, masters, and even some PhD programs that are available fully online. One other point of pride about our university, we are a top military-friendly school, so we have some designations in the state that recognize us in this regard. And one benefit of this is that we offer something called a National Graduate Service Reduced Tuition Rate for our veterans and those that have served. So something we're very proud of and something we continue to strive to keep that designation. So I've told you a little bit about Michigan Tech just to introduce things, and now it's my pleasure to hand it off to Dr. Kurtu, who's going to introduce the field and the topic of applied statistics. Dr. Kurtu.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet you. Zoom meet you, everybody. What is applied statistics? My personal research is in computational neuroscience, which uses modeling, but also statistics. So I'm excited about this field because statistics is usually very, very closely related to applications. And obviously, we are living in a world with huge data sets. And to understand the patterns in the data, you need techniques. And applied statistics is actually a field which is dealing with exactly this target. So looking for patterns in the data. So obviously part of applied statistics means you would need to collect the data, analyzing, interpreting, and then summarizing the data in order to present it and, to be able to formulate questions and in the end, make some informed decisions. So that's basically the difference between other fields and applied statistics. It's just looking very closely to the data with this target in mind to understand the patterns and then based on those patterns, draw some conclusions and make informed decisions. And there are different tools in applied statistics and obviously, they are just looking at hypothesis testing and there's statistical computing and statistical modeling, everything just looking at real data. And for that reason, there are so many software tools that had to be used. And on the slides, there's several listed. I believe many depend also on the field. So my understanding is, for example, SPSS is just a lot used in social sciences. There's Stata, which is usually mostly used in economics, but mostly in industry is used Python. And I think R is very specific also in statistics. So part of being, student in this program, you'll have the chance to learn and to use these software packages. So next slide, maybe. Yes, thank you. So obviously, we would be interested in knowing where to apply statistics. Is we talk about applied statistics, what are examples of fields where we can use? I mentioned at the beginning that my own work is in computational neuroscience. That means application to understand brain activity. So in medicine is one field, definitely where statistics is needed. So biostatisticians are actually everywhere in all medical labs and medical schools, for example, and doctors are looking for statistics to understand diseases and also the use of drugs to help heal certain ailments. And finance, it's a big field where statistics is needed because there's so much data, right, on the to understand how the market works. And I think it's, you know, a wild field to deal with this. Politics, obviously, all these campaign managers rely a lot on statistics to understand demographics, voters' behavior, predictions are important in this field. And there are many other diverse fields. I mean, everywhere in science, in engineering, we are an engineering school, Michigan Tech, so there's so many fields in engineering, where again, you would like to understand the data to make a better modeling and build better machines, for example. So next slide.
Okay, thank you, Radhika, and thank you all for coming to this session. And I will talk about why you should study applied statistics at MTU. Next slide, please. And we have two programs you can choose. One is the certificate in applied statistics, and one is the Master of Science in Applied Statistics. For the certificate program, you will take 3 courses, and one is a core course that is statistical method. So you are going to learn the basic statistical techniques. Then after that, you can take 2 other courses you are interested. For example, if you're interested in big data analysis, you can take predictive modeling and statistical data mining. Or if you're interested in experimental design and regression, so it's really up to you. It's very flexible. So, and after you take 3 courses, and then you will get a certificate in applied statistics. And then also, if you are interested after that, and then you really enjoy the online, or you want to learn more about statistics, you can take another 7 courses to get a master degree. So the master degree in applied statistics, you will take 10 online courses, and I will introduce more online courses later in this program. So if you can go to next slides, please. Okay, so our online class is 100% online, so which means you don't need to physically go to campus. And all the online classes are very well designed. And you can see on the slides. So this is a week of the courses. So that include the new license 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. So we break the material into 3 modules, and each module you can learn from the online material, you can watch the videos, you can read the book to help you understand the statistical methods. And then we also design other activities in this week. You can see we have small quizzes, and then we have discussions, and then we have homeworks. And then sometimes we will also have projects during the course. So it's very clear. So what are the goals of this week? And also we have the estimated time for each of the activity. So it's very easy for you to manage your time. And so you can, based on your working schedule, and then you can set up a time to finish the test of the week. Next slides, please. Okay, we have many students graduate from our online program. They have had great learning experiences. So Mary is a high school math teacher, and she said that I choose Michigan Tech because I was aware of MTU's STEM reputation and knew they were a solid school in mathematical fields. And Jay, he is a senior analyst and also a commercial analytics. And he said that the course cover multiple applications. The professors are there for you whenever you need them. So I want to emphasize that although this program is 100% online, but we do offer Zoom office hours. So you can, so whenever you need help, you can come to the Zoom office hour. And if you have a time conflict, and then you can send the instructor email, and either the question can be answered by email, or you set a different Zoom time, Zoom meeting, and then it works both for you. So it's not like you never see the professor. So we are here to help, and then you will also know your classmates. So we have a group project, and you doing project with your classmates, and then you also sometimes you make comments based on other students' presentation. So you will know the instructor, you will know your classmates very well by end of the courses. And Keith is a software engineer, and he said that this degree has amazing teachers and real-life applications. I know that once I finish, I will be applying this work immediately. And I do have students make these comments after they learn the online course. They said that they can apply right away to their project. And also many of our instructors engaging in collaborations with faculties across campus, and including computer science, engineering, business, and forest. So you will experience courses filled with real-world applications. So by the end of the program, you won't just understand the new statistical methods, you will feel confidence using them to solve real-world problems. So if you are interested in pursuing an online master's program with certificates in applied statistics, we encourage you to consider ours, and I'm confident you will find it a rewarding choice. And thank you for your attention, and I will turn to Professor Zhang, and he will give an overview of our online programs.
Okay, thanks everybody. So next slide, please. Okay, so I will just give you some detailed description of the certificate and the MS program. So I'm currently serving as a coordinator of the program, also serve as an advisor for all the online students. And as the Professor Shah have mentioned, you can do two things at the beginning. If you are not sure what you want to do, you can get basically a graduate certificate. Okay, so and this certificate you can do online 100%, and you only need to take 3 courses. Okay, so 1 is required, and there are also 2 electives. So you can choose 2 electives among 6 courses offered, and each course basically is 7-week courses. Okay, so and in those courses, I think all the courses are similar. So and it's applied the statistics courses, but also we have some theoretical part. You will learn a lot of things, including the industry standard software tools such as R and SAS. And if you plan well, I think you can earn your certificate and as later as 2 semesters. Okay, so just 6 months, I would say. And at the same time, if you already in the graduate certificate, you can apply those credits to your online master degree. Next slide, please. Okay, so and you're thinking why you want to learn the online graduate certificate in applied statistics. Okay, so basically, so I would say it's very useful for your career development. So I mean, for these courses, first one you can gain some quantitative skill set, and you feel confident and to apply those methods to solve real world problems after you learn those courses. Okay, so and also it's very quick, as I mentioned. It's you only take as little as like 2 semesters to get those like certificate. Okay, so and also because you only take 3 courses, and if you feel you don't want to do this one, you can just stop. And if you want study deeper or more, you can apply those coursework or credits to a graduate degree. Okay, so that's basically give you a lot of flexibility at the beginning of the program. Okay, so depends on your interest, on your needs, on your other situations. Okay, so and then because it's so easy to get the graduate certificate, okay, you will lose nothing. So to do so, next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, the second step after you get the statistical the certificate, the graduate certificate, if you study more, and you can continue to enroll more courses, and you can get a master degree. For the master degree, also is 100% online. Okay, so and it's very flexible. Basically, so I will talk this little in detail. You can start every semester, basically the spring, fall, and summer, whatever, whenever you're ready, you can start it to study. And as the same as the graduate certificate, you will learn a lot of software tools, learn a lot of applications of statistical methods, also learn some serial statistics. Okay, so and for this degree, you need 10 courses. That's 30 credits. Okay, so and for all these 10 courses, each of them is still we call it 7-week compact courses, and you finish within 7 weeks. Okay, so for the for this kind of for this program, okay, so if you really study very hard and you plan well, I think you can get a degree in the 5 let me see, in 5 semesters. Okay, so that means every semester you took 2 courses. Okay, so for each track, track A, track B, you take each course, and then 10 courses you can complete as little as in the 5 semesters. But okay, I think that's maybe a little bit too. If you think a little bit too much for you, then you can spend a little bit more time. Okay, so to complete the program to get the MS degree. Okay, so also if you don't worry about math background or some quantitative the background, because you can also enroll the bridge course in linear algebra that will be provided by the program at the same time. The next slide, please. Okay, so you wonder what you will do in this in online math in applied statistics program. And basically, so as I mentioned, there each course contains a lot of useful things. Okay, so you will learn and apply advanced statistical analysis and methods, and I will talk this a little bit in later more when we talk about what courses are offered. And you will get familiar, also improve your familiarity with the industry standards like software tools. Okay, so and you will work with a real data set, and I think almost in every course offered, you will have final project. That means you will find the real data and use what you have learned to analyze data and get some interesting conclusions. Okay, so and basically also you will build some special quantitative skills for several different fields time series, linear models and predictive models. You will learn a lot, I would say. Okay. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so here basically is the program structure. So what courses are offered for the program? Okay, so on the right side you can see basically that's the requirement for the graduate certificate. You will require 3 courses. Okay, so and one course is called MA 5701 is a statistical method. This is the basic course, is required for the certificate. Then after you complete it, then you can select 2 courses. among those like the 6 courses. Okay, so including design and analysis of experiments, regression, computational statistics, and others. Okay, so and all these like 7 courses are included in the program for the masters. Okay, so and basically, so the master program has like the 10 courses. Each course has 3 credits. Okay, so and if you can look at those courses offered, you can see it covers a lot of things. Okay, so from the theory, for example, we have the probability and statistical inference 1 and 2. That's basically about theory behind those statistical methods and procedures. And we also covers wide wide like the area of statistics, including like the regression analysis, time series, predictive modelings, and also generalized linear models, for example. And for these 10 courses, okay, so at the current stage, okay, so these 10 courses are all required for the MS program. We are planning, okay, to add more courses later, so you can have more choices. I mean, still the requirement, you need to like complete 10 courses. Okay, so and if we add more courses, you just have more selection and there's more flexibilities. Okay, so for you to choose which course you want to like take or enroll. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an example schedule about how you like can complete this MS program in like 3 years. Okay, so and it starts from the year 1 from spring, and as I mentioned, among those 10 courses, there are 2 courses are basic. We call MA 40 as a probability and statistical inference 1, and MA 5701 as statistical method. Okay, so those 2 courses are basic, and they are offered for every every semester. For each year, for every semester, like spring, summer, fall, those courses will be offered. And at the same time, 2 other courses among those 8 courses will be offered, like will be offered. Okay, as I mentioned, okay, so if you like study very hard, you have time, and you can take MA 4700 and MA 5701 at the beginning. Then for each rest of 4 semesters, you can take 2 other courses. You can complete the program and get your MS degree as little as in like the 5 semester. But many times, okay, you may not have time. Okay, so and you can plan like what program what course you want to take for each semester, and this is just the example. Okay, so and also the good thing is basically so we will share those tentative schedule with you, and basically we will have a schedule like 2 or 3 years ahead. Okay, so you can like really look at schedule and look at your like the responsibilities or some other things to arrange and to consider which course you would like to take in each semester. Okay, so thank you. For next slides. Okay, so and I would say you need like you also need to pay attention about the time commitment. Okay, so and this is an online course, and basically so but you need to expect the you make some the effort or spend some time. Okay, so and Dr. Shah already showed one like the page of the course. It give you estimated time for each like for example for each like for each component, but that's just an estimate. Okay, so that's the exact time you will spend really depends on like your background and learning pace, and many other factors. Okay, but generally you are expected to dedicate like 8 to 12 hours per week. And also you can see each week you have the lectures, we have the quizzes, we also have the homework assignment. Okay, so and those you need to allocate time. Also you submit online before the deadline. Okay, so and also like you need like to plan for additional time during the exam weeks, because you need to work on the final exam. You will have like the final project to finish and the other things. Okay, so I think the best strategy for this kind of thing is you just don't want to fall behind on the schedule. I mean, you can, go ahead before the schedule, but not behind the schedule. Okay, so, but also I think, another thing, you should, communicate with your like the lecturer, seek, his or her help if you feel any difficulties. Okay, so, and do we have another slide? Can you go to next slide, please? Okay, so I think, that's all I want to, describe. If you have any question, please let me know.
Thank you, Dr. Cui. So, Dr. Cui Zhang, we'll go to the next question about career opportunities. I think it's a reasonable question to ask what's the value of taking a Master's of Science in Applied Statistics. And in general, right, we've seen it as an investment in a higher education degree. It's a financial investment and it's a time investment. As we heard the description of Dr. Zhang, 10 courses means about 5 semesters, and that's already a time investment and also obviously a financial investment. So what are the values actually in terms of career opportunities? And we've seen 3 examples, testimonies of our alumni. One was a math teacher, one was a senior analyst, and the other one was software engineer. So these were 3 different examples in 3 different fields. The idea is that what we try to convey here is having a Master of Science in Applied Statistics is actually very valuable in the today's world of massive increase of data. So because of this, there's an obvious enhanced need for statistical approaches, for analysis, and with this comes a growth in the jobs related to statistics and mathematics in general. So we have here some numbers. It's like a number 2 in best STEM jobs considered, and there is a considerable job growth for mathematicians and statisticians projected for 2032, so for the next years, and with a nice median annual salary of about 100K. So there are opportunities, and the question is, what are the fields where those jobs are spread or exist? So next slide, please. And I did mention in my previous presentation about biostatisticians and relationship with medical and health fields, but also in finance, obviously as a risk analyst or financial analyst, everything which has a quantitative background, reasoning skills, programming skills will actually take a lot of advantage of this applied statistics masters. Obviously, I also mentioned pollster in the government and politics, but also in business, as a statistician, in marketing, marketing analyst is a potential career opportunity in engineering, all related with quality and manufacturing, will probably rely on some statistics and analysis of data. And in general, for science and research, so I think that a recent experience I had with interacting with Grok, for example, part of XAI, was to find out that actually it declares that it has a soul right now. So I guess being a cognitive AI data scientist, maybe just a new field that obviously will also rely on applied statistics. So multiple possibilities and indefinitely multiple areas or fields where applied statistics will be a good skill to have for a career opportunity. Next slide. I think I'll give it to Amanda to talk about application process. Thanks.
Thank you. So we kind of wrapped up the program information and got a lot of really good details. But now, if you take that program information and you're ready to apply, we're going to go through what the next steps in the process look like. So it's really pretty straightforward. We break it down into 1, 2, 3 here. So the first thing you'd have to do is create your application portal account. When you go out to the grad schools page and follow the link to apply, you'll create an account with a personal email address. You'll create a password to that account. And after you've created that account, you'll do step 2, which is insert your application. When you insert your grad school application, you'll fill in some general information about you, some academic history, and then it's going to ask you what program you're planning to apply to. Depending on the certificate or the master's degree program that you select and then hit submit on your application, there's going to be an admissions checklist that populates in your application portal page. And that's where you would do step 3, which is to upload required documents. So we'll talk a little bit more about what those required documents look like in the next slide. So general admission requirements, and I do just want to mention too that we are rolling admission, and so there's not a hard set deadline for you to apply. So we have a spring semester coming up in January. There is still time to apply for that semester if you wanted to. While there's not a hard set deadline, I would suggest applying sooner than later because there are some steps in the process for getting you admitted, processing the decision, having you work with Dr. Zhang for help planning your classes, registering, paying, all of that stuff. So sooner is better. You do have to have an accredited bachelor's degree to apply to this program. And some of the key classes that they're looking for with your application are Calculus 1 and 2, linear algebra, and an introductory statistics course. And those have to be completed to even be considered for the program. I would mention here too, if you have, say, Calc 1 and 2 and an intro stat class, but maybe you didn't take linear algebra, Michigan Tech does offer a bridge course for that linear algebra. It's a non-credit course, short term. I think it's 7 or 10 weeks long. And you could take that, and that would cover the requirement for linear algebra if needed. So basic application requirements. So when you see that admissions checklist, you're going to need to upload a copy of your transcripts. With the application, you can use a student copy of your transcripts. We will require an official copy of your transcripts, usually within the first semester of you starting at Michigan Tech. To help expedite the application process, you can use student copies for the application. You'll have to upload a copy of your resume. Definitely want to see your work experience in the application. There's a personal statement and a statement of purpose that you'll have to write. And so the personal statement is more geared towards telling us more about you, maybe something that's not otherwise evident in your application. Maybe there was a semester where you had a low GPA, or you took a leave that they're going to see in your academic history and you just want to explain what was going on, or maybe other unique thing about you that we just can't see in the application. The statement of purpose is more of a student statement. So why are you interested in this program? What are your career and education goals that are moving you towards this program? So both of those statements are relatively short. They're 2,000 and 3,000 characters, not words, characters. So short. And there's also prompts inside of the application, so you know what you should be writing about. There are 2 letters of recommendation that are required. It's preferred that you have at least 1 academic reference when possible, but we do understand that people are coming back to school after several years in the workforce and maybe haven't kept those academic relationships. And so it is okay to use 2 professional recommendation letters. I mean, what they're doing ultimately with this application is wanting to see a picture of, can this student be successful in our program? So you're going to want to select recommenders that can speak to your success in the workforce or in the academic field. There is not an application fee for you. So there's no money you have to put in to apply to the program, and we don't require any entrance exams. So there's no GMAT, no GRE required. So really all you're out is a little bit of time and effort to do this application. Upcoming start dates. Like I said, we have a semester coming up January 5th. We call it our spring semester, even though it's wintertime. That is our spring term, and there is still time to apply. If I was going to give you like a rough estimate for when you should have your application in, again, rolling admission, so we can do things after, but I would shoot for the end of November at the latest to have your application complete so that it has time to move through the review and admission process, and we can have you get started successfully, because we are also working around some holidays coming up too. Summer semester application is also available. Our summer semester starts May 4th, and then our fall semester application is available as well, and classes are going to start August 31st for that. Highly recommend setting up a meeting with me. So if you've got some real specific questions about your circumstance, I get a lot of questions about those prerequisite courses, the calcs, linear algebra, statistics. You might have something that's really close, or maybe you had a course that had some statistics inside of it. And so if you want to set up an appointment with me, we can kind of chat through your questions. We can look at your transcripts. Definitely do that. They should be sharing a link to my calendar in the chat. That links directly to my Gmail and is real-time availability for me. You can set up a Zoom or a phone appointment, and I'd be happy to look things over with you and help you through the admissions process. And I'm going to hand it back to Rick to close us out of the session.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda, and thanks everyone for walking through that. Just final slide here, departmental contacts. You've met Dr. Zhang here. Dr. Yang is also available in the as a director in the graduate program office. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more beyond what we've talked about here, you can certainly reach out, and certainly, as Amanda had said too, as a first point of contact for our online students, schedule an appointment with her. So that is the conclusion of all of our formal presentation. So we have time for questions. And I guess just as a reminder too, please take a look in the chat, because Shelley has provided a lot of good links to some of those resources we talked about. But if there's any questions, please post those and we can go through those. I think I see a question come in here. Do you want to read that, Shelley?
Yep. How long has this program existed? And are there statistics about placement of master's students, graduates after graduation, such as success in finding a job, increase in salary, and so on?
I think we might have the best history of how long the program's been around. I think you've been teaching in it. Can you take a stab at that one?
I'm not, I don't know exactly how long. I think it started like 2021. It's at least 4 or 5 years already. I don't have that statistic, but the success rate in finding a job or increasing salary. I think most of those students, if not all the students, they have a job, and they were having job when they enrolled the program. Okay, so and unfortunately, I don't know the answer to the other question. So
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
I think it was 2019 that became fully online, correct? Radhika?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
before COVID, so 2019, yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's a really well-designed program, like you saw inside of it, with the modules and the time constraints, and it was designed with quality matters in mind. So it's one of the few programs that was designed to be online that I know.
All right, so I think that helped Jacob. I see a comment, maybe not a question, that the program is amazing. I don't know if this person is in the program or has firsthand experience, but thank you, Hisham, for sharing that. Or maybe it's based on our presentation today.
I
Any
can
other
say
questions?
that maybe if we don't have the statistics now, I mean, I'm also new as a chair of the department, but we'll work on the statistics and post it online as soon as possible. So at least to bring more testimonials and maybe the statistics to inform. I think Jacob asked the question. So we'll try
Sure.
to find an answer and let you know.
Yeah, I know we have our career services track some data, and I think they do ask graduate students as well as undergraduates, but the like the national survey is more undergraduate focused in terms of like first job after graduation. So the data isn't always directly correlating. I think as Kui had said, right, many of the online students are already employed. So the questions don't tease out like, did they get a promotion or did they get an advancement in a position versus are they already employed when they graduate. So but yeah, I think we can follow up on that. And like you said, post what we can share on a website.
Can I ask you a question about course availability? Are these courses normally available in every semester, or do you have to start at a certain time?
As I mentioned, okay, so each semester there are 4 courses, available. The 2 courses MA like 4700 and the MA 5701 are available for each semester, and also the other 2 among like 8 courses are also available. So in each semester.
Oh, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard
Yes,
it
because
described as the carousel. I was going to say, so like certain courses are offered certain semesters in like a rotation beyond those 2 entry courses that are every semester. So there's a lot of flexibility to work through. Like Kui had shown too, if you're on the 5-semester plan, there's a path to get you there. If you need to spread that out with some planning, there's going to be something available each semester for you once you take those first 2 courses. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say that those 2 courses that Dr. Jung mentioned, I mean, by numbers might not mean much, but they are actually the courses which are prereqs for the others. So that's why they offer each semester. So if you start in spring or in summer or in fall, you have the chance to take those 2 courses for sure, because they will be offered. And other 2 are just more like in a carousel. So in the end, you'll have the chance to take all.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, once you take those, you're open to take what's available in the carousel model, if you will, because you will have the prerequisites. And Kevin had to leave, so yeah, appreciated that. Any other questions? I might stop recording at this point, but